Thank you very much. Thank you, Trevor. I am very happy to be here to raise awareness for one of the most pressing issues of our day. While we've come to talk about AIDS, all of our thoughts and prayers go out to those struggling to recover from the devastation of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, the devastation that is almost impossible to comprehend. And the people of the Gulf Coast will need our help and support for years to come. AIDS is also a kind of natural disaster. And just as we need a coordinated emergency response to overcome the destruction of hurricanes, we also need to come together to coordinate a response to the global AIDS emergency, a response that helps to build clinics, and roads and train doctors and support the more than 15 million AIDS orphans that have been abandoned and isolated by the pandemic. And yet there are two central differences between AIDS and a hurricane or a tsunami. First is that AIDS is a quiet killer. Most of the 30 million people that AIDS had killed died quiet, lonely, painful deaths. There were no news helicopters overhead. The second difference is that we know how to prevent AIDS. As countries like Thailand have shown us, with the right levels of funding and commitment, we can dramatically reduce its transmission. Aggressive public health campaigns, access to condoms and reproductive health services, access to encouraged testing and counseling, and access to life-saving treatment can stop this disease. Unfortunately, we are not doing what we need to do. 3 weeks ago in London, international donor countries pledged $3.7 billion to the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. That is about half the amount needed to meet its goals for the next 2 years. These are the same governments who gathered in Scotland at the G8 and announced with much fanfare that they would provide universal access to AIDS treatment for all who need it by 2010, a goal they will never achieve with the level of funding they've committed. So here we are. Business must play a role in the fight against AIDS. The reason we are all gathered here tonight is to recommit ourselves to the fight against the disease and to recognize those business leaders who are leading the fight. The central premise of the Global Business Coalition and of this event is that every company in the world has a role to play in the fight against AIDS. Let me give you a few examples of what companies can do. First, they can prevent and treat the disease within their workforce. Companies have an opportunity and a responsibility to put in place efforts to educate their employees, giving them access to testing and counseling, and ensure access to life-saving medicine. Second, companies can use their products and services in the fight against the disease. A company that makes shoes can put them on the feet of AIDS orphans. Companies that make computers can work with physicians to better track patients and the spread of the disease. Media companies can donate airtime. Finance companies can help ensure that money is well spent. All of these things and more are already happening at GBC. And finally, and most importantly, CEOs can pressure governments to do more. Elected officials, whether in Africa or right here in Washington, listen carefully to what CEOs have to say. CEOs are among the most powerful forces in the world, and with that comes responsibility. 40 million people are now infected. And if we don't all use the power we have to help, millions, hundreds of millions of people will die. Recently, this issue became very personal to me. This year, I adopted a baby girl from Ethiopia, Zahara. And she is one of nearly 1 million AIDS orphans from her country alone. Upon arriving in the States, she had to be admitted to a hospital for severe dehydration and malnutrition. And while we were there, other concerns appeared, and there was a fear that she might be HIV positive. And I was sat down by a nurse who meant very well, but said, "Don't worry, honey. In this country, it's not a death sentence." What does that mean? I don't know what that means. So if you're poor, you don't have a right to life. That we haven't come together in this world to treat this disease properly and equally is a disgrace. And we will never get it under control if we are selective about who gets to serve. The terrible numbers associated with AIDS have a way of numbing us. We cannot be numb, and we cannot count on our government to fix it. Everyone in this room has the power to save lives, and for those of you who are not already, I hope by the end of this evening you choose to do so. Thank you for joining us tonight. And now I would like to introduce Ambassador Richard Holt.